This is a KRQE Investigate special with Gabrielle Burkhart and Pierret.
Hello and welcome to another quarterly special with your KRQE Investigates team. I'm Pierret here with my coworker Gabrielle Burkhart. Over the next hour, we are going to show you some of our most impactful investigations that aired during these final months of 2025. They range from unique criminal cases to updates on major investigations that we dug into this year.
Yeah, we're going to take you behind the scenes of each of these stories and share some added context about what we learned in each of these investigations. Our first story we're going to talk about recently aired at the beginning of December and took us inside of a case where a man shot at who he believed were home intruders or trespassers in the middle of the night. This story takes some turns and it left people questioning the police investigation. So let's take a look.
Chaos on a neighborhood street at 3 a.m.
That guy right there in the house got me.
In this house right here?
Yeah.
Did you guys?
I have everything on camera.
Albuquerque police respond to a home near Central and 98th for two people lying in the street. A man shot in the leg and a woman with a head injury.
Somewhere in here she got a laceration.
That's a homeowner who heard the gunshots and called 911. His neighbor admits he's the one who fired those shots.
I heard screaming. I saw a weapon. I feared for my life. And as they were running away, I shouldn't have done it, but I decided to take shots.
Isai Rivas-Torres is detained and immediately promises to help police.
I'll be extremely compliant.
Once in the cop car, he answers their questions, even allows the officer into his phone to see what his home surveillance cameras captured. Take a look.
And I saw these two guys in masks going to the right, over there where my trash bins are.
Rivas-Torres says the trespassers left for a few minutes and then his cameras alerted him they were back.
So I pointed the light at both of them to kind of let them know, like, hey, I'm awake and I'm seeing you guys.
But he says that didn't deter them, so he grabbed his semi-automatic rifle because
I just heard like loud, very loud screaming, like someone was getting hurt. And they were running by and I could have sworn I saw a weapon. And that's why I decided to shoot.
While police and crime scene investigators secure the scene, Rivas-Torres is brought to the substation where detectives question him.
And I've never handled a fire alarm in my life. I've never even pointed a gun in my life.
Okay, at the moment when you pull the trigger, what was going through your head?
Protect my family.
He tells them he's still reeling from a recent attempted break-in when his wife was home alone.
I didn't mean harm, I just reacted.
Rivas-Torres then learns he'll be criminally charged.
What am I facing, bro? Can I ask you that?
Aggravated battery with a deadly weapon.
Oh,
All he's done is play his cards right. He doesn't even have a speeding ticket. He's never been in trouble. He's never gotten in fights. He's never done anything in his life.
Sergio Rivas says his younger brother is hardworking and a sweetheart. He's a volunteer soccer coach for 2 young teams and plays the sport professionally, just like his older brother.
He is very involved in the community. He is a great brother and great husband, and seeing him in those chains was just like, how is this even possible right now?
That Rivas-Torres is facing up to 8 years in prison. With no criminal history, he expected his brother would be out after his first hearing, but
the state of New Mexico versus Isaiah Rivas-Torres.
The Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office filed a motion to keep the 24-year-old behind bars until his case goes to trial, calling him a danger to the community.
How can we ensure that something like this does not get in the defendant's hands again?
But to Rivas-Torres' defense attorneys, the state wasn't sharing the whole story.
In the state's presentation, they entirely overlook a victim in this case.
Remember the woman who suffered a head injury?
Please help me! Why do you help the perpetrator first?
Can you explain what happened?
No, are you a cop? No.
Okay.
I can't.
Okay.
I can't.
She refused to speak to police, worried about what would happen to her if she did. But Days later, the woman contacted Rivas Torres via the Metro Detention Center's messaging system. She wrote to him, quote, "Were you the one that saved my life and shot the guy who was attacking me on your property?" The woman shared her phone number too and agreed to tell his defense team she was at his home that night for a drug deal.
I was to make a drop, a big one. I really needed my rent money. And instead of paying me for it, they decided to set me up.
She says they brought her to Rivas Torres' house, saying a family member lived there and they needed to get a scale.
I bent down to tie my shoe and I looked up to a revolver in my face. And then I started to get loud. You know, I said, "Please don't do this." And they just all started to attack me. It was violent. I got pistol whipped.
You can hear part of that.
You're dumb. You're dumb.
In the video Rivas Torres shared with police.
I just was fighting, screaming, praying that somebody was gonna help me. And they heard something and they all ran.
She says it was Rivas Torres.
I probably wouldn't be sitting right here. He is a hero and he deserves to know that. And I'm so sorry that he's in.
The judge denied the petition to detain Rivas Torres.
He saved her life. She's saving his life now.
Providing evidence his defense attorneys Tyler Tominski and Aaron Mitchell say should exonerate their client.
We've got, in my opinion, a very strong defense of others claim.
When you see somebody that's in danger, you can take steps under defense of others to protect that person from danger, just like you could take steps to protect yourself from danger.
But the law says you're not actually in danger when someone is running away.
But what we have to focus on is that a firearm was still being brandished at the point that the individuals who were attacking this poor lady were running away. And so they're still armed, they're still dangerous. I still believe that the actions under those circumstances were reasonable.
A grand jury indicted Rivas Torres on the criminal charge, but his defense attorneys say the woman's interview was not presented, and they believe that's grounds to dismiss the case. The DA disputes that. A judge will hear their arguments next week.
So, Anne, let's just start with, how did you hear about this case?
Yeah, typically we've talked about before, we peruse court records all the time and we find some fascinating cases through that. But this one, the attorney reached out and he said, "Hey, have you seen this one? It's just not adding up. And we actually have some exculpatory evidence that could exonerate our client. And it just seems like the investigation wasn't properly done. We've got a lot of questions. Would this be something you're interested in?" So, of course, we're always interested, right? So I started talking with him, looked at what the court record said, the criminal complaint, and then had him send me his side of things. And really from there, it sparked to this conversation of, this could be an interesting one. And of course, how we presented it is really just, here's this side, here's that side. Viewers, you decide how you feel about this one.
Yeah, I think what really stuck out is, you could watch how it unfolded, see how flustered he was. And he even told police, I shot, probably shouldn't have. But he claims he was trying to protect his family. So he is now, the other twist in the story, he's now in ICE custody, right? What happens next with him? Yeah, so he was indicted by a grand jury even after the judge said that he won't be held behind bars while they wait for this trial to happen. But at that arraignment for the grand jury indictment, ICE showed up, according to his attorney, and he said they did arrest him when he was leaving and trying to head to his attorney's office, or detained him, I guess is the proper wording I should use. So he's actually in El Paso right now at a facility, and his attorney has waived any of his appearances for now at any of these hearings, just trying to get this criminal case moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see, to date ourselves. It is December 4th, and coming up on Monday, December 8th, is this motion to dismiss hearing, and they are saying you didn't present this witness's interview, and so
judge, you need to dismiss this case on behalf of our clients. So
yeah, okay. So we'll pay attention to what happens here. The case could be dismissed, but it might not mean he's immediately out of ICE custody. So we'll pay attention to what happens with him. Thank you so much. When we come back, we'll dive into another investigation into a topic that ended up also being very timely.
Welcome back. Our next investigation is kind of an upsetting one. Gabby uncovered that in at least one New Mexico community, one of the deadliest drugs on the street, we're talking about fentanyl, is being paid for with SNAP benefits. That's government money meant to buy groceries. Take a look.
There's a dark corner, it seems, in even the quiet, quaint communities of rural New Mexico. The same problems you'll find in big cities, smaller agencies are grappling with in their hometowns.
The biggest crime we face is pretty much the same as every other community right now. It surrounds the drug market.
Sierra County Sheriff Joshua Baker's deputies recently pieced together a case revealing government-issued EBT cards or SNAP benefits being used as currency in the drug market.
This case started with the unfortunate overdose death of one of our Sierra County residents.
A 26-year-old father, investigators say, died from an accidental fentanyl overdose this summer. His death investigation led deputies here.
Mr. Armstrong, do you have any idea why we would even be here?
Drugs.
The home of 63-year-old John Charles Armstrong near Truth or Consequences.
Just got hooked on them damn blue pills and I can't get rid of them.
Fentanyl pills, the highly addictive and cheap drug flowing in from Mexico, a major driver in overdose deaths over the last 6 years.
I just tell them to help people that are sick too. I don't buy them to sell them. I don't make money off of them.
Armstrong admits he got hooked after his mom died.
She just went downhill from there. So did I.
John, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you just fell in the wrong crowd.
Investigators couldn't link him to anyone's death, but inside his home, deputies found meth, fentanyl, and text messages with people Armstrong sold fentanyl to, claiming to help people he knew were sick with withdrawals.
It's way worse than heroin was, and it's way worse than the other drugs that we've encountered. So it makes them very physically ill, and that drives the market.
In this exchange, 36-year-old Robert Iverson asks Armstrong if he'd take $500 in food stamps for 100 worth of BS, slang for beans or fentanyl pills. I'm thinking, please hold, Armstrong replies. Iverson ups the offer to $700 worth. 2-for-1 food stamps, Armstrong says, and the two agree on a deal. Iverson's food stamps for 50 fentanyl pills. He's essentially paying like twice the going rate, right?
Yes, ma'am. We find that to be a common trend because the inconvenience of having to go and utilize the EBT card, they charge double, sometimes even triple what the going street rate would be in cash.
Sheriff Baker says this happens more often than they can end up proving in court. But since Armstrong had just recently handed over the fentanyl pills in exchange for food stamps, deputies were able to track the EBT transactions to 2 stores in town, including a Dollar General, where the surveillance video still existed.
Camera recording started.
Inside those stores,
yeah, that's a purchase. Can't go back.
a deputy confirms the timestamp of Iverson's EBT transactions, seeing Armstrong use it to buy himself groceries.
And then pays cash for the cigarettes.
Armstrong was charged with 2 counts of felony drug trafficking. Iverson booked on unlawful dealing in federal food coupons, a misdemeanor. Before he was caught selling his family's food stamps, Iverson asked his drug dealer if he could come grab his EBT card since he needed milk and drinks. Investigators noting in their report that Iverson has 2 kids.
That's very heartbreaking to hear because we would never want that to be done with the benefits that we're providing.
Nikki Kozlowski is with New Mexico's Healthcare Authority, the department that manages federally funded SNAP benefits.
It is not something that's widespread. Based upon all of our fraud indications,
Indicators like multiple PIN changes, large purchases, or using SNAP out of state will raise a flag in the system, but SNAP users are not required to show ID for purchases, partly to allow family members and caregivers to shop for others.
The current guardrails are working, however, we understand that we can do more.
Using mobile wallets or tap to pay is one potential safeguard.
It'll be in your phone and you really won't be able to give it to someone else.
New Mexico provides SNAP benefits to about 460,000 people, roughly 21% of the state's population, a need she says most families use as intended. But for those desperate enough to trade food stamps for drugs,
would you be surprised if someone overdosed on what you gave them?
I would. I'd be very surprised.
Sheriff Baker says the system isn't built to stop them. What would help you?
More severe penalties for a lesser dollar amount. Not so much to put these people in prison, so to speak, but then we can get that court-ordered rehab and treatment and try to correct what's causing the problem in the beginning, which is the drug addiction.
Gabby, this is such an unusual case. How did you come across this one?
Well, similar to your other story, this was just a criminal complaint, actually, a court filing that we had noticed. And our boss had kind of brought this up as like, this is weird. And it wasn't the first one we had seen like this, where it's like, people using their food benefits in the drug market. So I reached out to the Sierra County Sheriff's Office. They had investigated, and they'd actually done an extensive amount of investigating into this case, which I found interesting because you can't always prove a case like this. Like, they had talked to the alleged drug dealer soon enough to where they were able to go find surveillance video and sort of corroborate the transaction with the EBT cards and the fentanyl by just looking at that surveillance card and video and being able to timestamp it with the use of the EBT card that was sold for the drugs.
I was really fascinated to, you mentioned the guy who had overdosed in your story. That's gotta be fascinating for his family, right? To kind of have that backtrack. Did you talk to the police at all about that ability to kind of find those answers? That's huge.
Yeah. Well, what's really frustrating, I think, for investigators and, anyone looking at cases like this is how deadly fentanyl is. And the Sierra County Sheriff was clear, they want to take manslaughter charges in cases that they can prove where a drug dealer sold someone a drug that resulted in a death. They couldn't quite do that here, but I think that's kind of what led them to do all this investigative work. They really take this seriously. And the other thing the sheriff pointed out to me, and we'll see in some of the fallout from this story, is that this isn't a one-off. And I was really surprised to see all on my social media channels when I shared this story, people in the comments were like, this has been going on for years, like since existence of food stamps. People have been trading it. And I even saw in our archives at KRQE, we've done stories about, people using their food stamps for like tattoos, for, haircuts. Like, it's just anything that can be used for currency kind of is. And it's really hard to track when you hand out money. Obviously, you want it to be used for good, but it's not always.
Right. And we're going to continue this discussion after the break because we're going to be back here with the commotion that this story really created. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. A big reason why we do this work is really to inform our viewers, let them know what is going on in our communities. Sometimes what we share sparks a larger conversation, can spark change, and that is what happened with the investigation that we just shared with you into food stamps being used to buy drugs. Take a look.
We recently exposed a case in Sierra County where investigators found a man trading his family's SNAP benefits to feed his fentanyl addiction. It's a case the New Mexico Health Authority says is rare, but the agency overseeing SNAP benefits admits there aren't many safeguards to stop something like this from happening or to alert them if it is. And that's something at least one state senator wants to change.
After your investigative report, I began to call around to law enforcement throughout all of my 7 counties. Apparently, this has been going on for quite some time, that SNAP benefits are used as a form of currency in criminal activity. That is one of many reasons why we need to take a thorough investigation into this program to make sure that we are feeding those who really, truly need this, and we're not feeding drug addictions.
Republican Senator Crystal Brantley says learning SNAP benefits were being traded for fentanyl in her hometown is gut-wrenching. She's now asking the Legislative Finance Committee to expand the scope of its mandated evaluation of the state's SNAP program, asking law enforcement to share information involving misuse or trafficking and document all findings of fraud, waste, abuse, or criminal misconduct within the program. If prosecutors lack authority to use SNAP transaction records in criminal cases, Brantley says she'll recommend changing the law to strengthen oversight of the program. The state's health authority, which oversees the federally funded food benefit program, says SNAP users don't have to show ID, for example, to make it easier for people to grocery shop for one another. And they want to maintain easy access for those who need crucial food benefits, something Brantley says she agrees with.
All of us should agree that no New Mexican needs to go hungry, but we need to track these dollars to make sure that they are getting into the hands and ultimately on the plates of those who need it most.
New Mexico provides SNAP benefits to roughly 21% of the state's population, and the need is even more crucial in rural communities like Sierra County, where roughly 40% of the population receives SNAP. Brantley is asking the LFC to share preliminary findings by January and complete its report on the SNAP program by July.
So, Gabby, one of the requests from State Senator Crystal Brantley is for law enforcement to share, document any instances of fraud, abuse, waste of SNAP benefits. So that got me thinking, was there no oversight over the EBT program previously?
It's a good question. And when I interviewed the health authority about this issue, they did grant me an on-camera interview, and it was one of those situations where I was also learning the process, right? So the USDA, it's a federal benefit. These are federal dollars, but the New Mexico Health Authority kind of oversees the distribution of those.
They dish it out.
Yeah, they dish out the funds for anyone in New Mexico who needs it. And we do have a high need in New Mexico. About 21% of our population uses food stamps. So it's a super crucial benefit in New Mexico. The other thing I learned from the health authority is that it is really hard to sort of flag instances of fraud or abuse. They kind of rely on the public to file these complaints with them, with the Inspector General's office, or you can report fraud or abuse. A lot of times people who have those SNAP benefits cards, their funds can be stolen with those same sort of like card reader instances. So they were talking about like ways that they are working towards the ability to protect, the people on those food benefits, but they also wanted to make it and keep it a program that people can access easily. And say if you're like an elderly person with these SNAP benefit cards, you kind of, you're not required to show ID when you use those cards at the grocery store because maybe a neighbor is shopping for you, or maybe it's your kid who needs the benefits. It's just one of those situations where it seems really hard to have that sort of oversight and flag these instances. But because of the way that the system is built, and you heard the sheriff in that first story, it's just really hard to prove.
That's exactly it. So it makes their investigation that much more remarkable that they were able to hold two people accountable in that case. So the next step here is the senator wants a full report by the Legislative Finance Committee by July. What do you expect once she gets those findings that she will do with that?
Well, she's asking for an expanded audit of House Bill 1 that by the Legislative Finance Committee. And if they're able to put in that evaluation, she also wants to send it to the Department of Agriculture to kind of show that New Mexico is doing its part to have the oversight of these federal dollars, to ensure that, people's tax dollars are going as intended. And in this case, it's for a really specific need. And she just wants to ensure, she told me, that the money is going as intended.
Could be really interesting to see if what she finds and what she does with this then influences other states, because again, this is a federal program. So New Mexico could be leading the way on kind of cutting down on that fraud and abuse. So could be interesting. All right, well, thank you. So we will be right back with yet another investigation.
Welcome back. One of the things we both appreciate this job, I think if I can speak for both of us, is that we get to dive into some of the systemic problems in our society. And that's exactly what Ann and our colleague, KRQE anchor reporter Jessica Goddard, they did in a 1 hour long special diving into generational problems with CYFD, that is the Children, Youth, and Families Department. They did an hour-long news special about it, but here's just a snippet from that special.
We're now bringing together experts who have spent their careers supporting, working with, and fighting against CYFD. We're going to have a discussion looking forward to what can and should change.
And today we would like to welcome Allison Endicott Quinones, an attorney with Advocacy Incorporated, a nonprofit that provides legal representation to kids in the state's custody. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you.
And Marilyn Beck, founder and executive director of the New Mexico Child First Network. It's a group of dedicated volunteer board members working to improve foster care. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you.
And we'd like to welcome Kevin Berry, Executive Director of Peak Treatment Foster Care, which assists CYFD in finding specialized foster parents for kids with psychological and behavioral problems. Kevin, thank you again for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And we brought all of you here because we want to talk solutions. We know there are deep systemic problems, systemic issues within this agency. So tell us, each one of you, if you will, if you could change one thing first within this state agency, what would it be?
I'll start. I get frustrated a lot because adults are in rooms having conversations. I would really like to remind all of us that this agency exists to protect vulnerable children. And so I think that really recenter the mission, the vision, and the values to a child-first approach.
Okay. Kevin?
I would agree with Marilyn. For me, it would be a philosophical shift to put the child back into child welfare with a priority on safety, and that the presumption that parental rights trump the rights of the child to be safe and healthy. I think it's wrong, and so we got to get back to safety.
And I absolutely agree with both of them. But I would add another piece is that structurally there's some changes that need to occur, but it's the structure and the culture are intertwined. So I actually believe that at this point, CYFD is not in a position where it is a functional agency such that there should be a complete, not just changing management or changing titles, there needs to be a complete bottom-up rebuild of the entire agency. Even if it's temporarily placed, for example, in the Department of Health so that CYFD can be restructured, and we've got to completely change the culture in that place or else nothing will change.
And I definitely want to touch on that in a minute, but Kevin, going back to philosophy and looking at like just the root of the problem, we do case after case where the state, no matter how terrible of a place this child has been pulled from, they're adamant about putting these kids back in those homes. How come?
I think the focus has shifted from what their original mission was in taking care of the child's safety, and there's now a big push to, it's not just in New Mexico, it's across the nation, for reunification, which I totally believe in when it's safe.
Safe and appropriate.
Safe and appropriate. And I think that we've lost that. It's like just send them home versus making sure that it's safe and appropriate.
I would also add, and I just want to clarify, I'm not an attorney. I spend many of my days like just reading the law, but I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what our children's code, the law that rules this sector of law, says about reunification and child safety. And it is very clear child safety, health and child safety is paramount. But we have to, like Allison said, rebuild from the culture of, there's been story after story, it's just a really bad game of telephone that has led us here. Go back to the policies, go back to the procedures, go back to why this department was created, and it was ultimately to protect children.
So you brought in several different voices for that panel that we just heard from. How did you land on this specific group to be part of that discussion?
Yeah, we really wanted to talk solutions here. That was the whole point of this special. You know, we kind of, at the beginning, what you didn't see, because again, this is just a snippet, we just talk about this generational problem of kids dying who are in state custody. Why does this keep happening? And the response from the state, why is it always the same? Why is nothing really being done? What can be done? So we brought together 3 people, as you just saw. So what we wanted to do was get a range of voices. So we have an attorney who's a guardian ad litem who represents kids who are in state custody. She's with them in court. Then you have a man from Roswell who runs a treatment foster care, and he works with CYFD with what he has to do. He has to be a partner to CYFD. And then we have an advocate who's long been a thorn in the side of CYFD, but has really made a positive impact with all of the different problems and concerns she's raised. So yeah, we just wanted to get a variety of people to really present their ideas.
Yeah, I think it's really remarkable for people to finally have a kind of one-stop shop where they can look at CYFD as a whole. And I think that's what your special was really impactful for. Did any specific solutions stick out to you? I know we've only got a few seconds.
You know, what I think is really important to note is that the Kevin S. settlement, which was settled in 2020, so 5 years ago, they lay out very clearly in all the documents bullet points of solutions that are possible. Maybe some of them in the future, maybe we have to take some time, right, to do those, but some of them possible tomorrow, today, in the next hour. So it's like, I think what we really learned is that there's just appears to be this resistance to change, and that's got to be a whole other conversation, right? So solutions exist, they're out there, and we just have to get serious about paying attention to them and doing something about them.
Well, I encourage everybody to go check out that special on the KRQE Now app, and we'll be right back.
All right, your KRQE Investigates team is back on the public corruption beat. We started this year talking about the DWI dismissal scandal. That is a scheme involving police officers from across the metro accepting bribes from defense attorneys to get their clients' cases dismissed. One of those officers named as a participant shocked this community, and Gabby has an update now on the so-called DWI King.
Hey there.
New Mexico State Police Sergeant Toby LaFave was quietly fired last month.
We don't look for people to tell us thank you or the recognition that we do get at times. It is nice to get it, though.
KRQE Investigates confirmed LaFave's employment with state police was terminated on October 29th, months after the department placed him on administrative leave pending an internal affairs investigation.
I've been doing this a long time, so you think that you've seen it all, but then something like this happens and you realize that you haven't.
Chief Troy Weisler placed LaFave on leave back in February when the feds added LaFave's name to a long list of officers across 3 departments who are no longer considered credible witnesses in court, linking LaFave to potential involvement in the state's biggest public corruption scheme, where officers were working with former defense attorney Thomas Clear III to get DWI cases dismissed for extra cash.
LaFave has not been charged with a crime. Neither the feds nor state police have said whether they found any evidence he participated in the DWI scheme, and we still don't know the results of the internal affairs investigation. Chief Weisler declined an interview today, but did confirm a misconduct report was filed with the Law Enforcement Certification Board. Here's Chief Weisler back in February.
First off, I want to apologize for it happening, or for that. This even be a suggestion that it happened. Obviously, we'll have to go through the whole process and see what turns out on the other side. But we will be working day in and day out to regain the trust of the community.
Before that, LaFave made hundreds of arrests in his more than 20-year career with the state's biggest police force. Known as the DWI King and cracking down on drunk drivers, his face was posted on NDWI campaign billboards along the freeway. KRQE Investigates learned through public records requests LaFave was still making his full $54 an hour paycheck while under investigation, racking up nearly $80,000 for staying off the streets before he was fired last month.
What'd you have to drink?
I only had a shot.
The stain on his credibility also means prosecutors were forced to drop nearly 40 pending DWI cases LaFave handled. Gabrielle, Burkhart, KRQE Investigates.
So it's important to note, as you did, that Toby LaFave has not been charged with a crime. At this point, we do know 8 law enforcement officers have faced federal charges. Are you, at this point, from what we both know, I mean, can we expect more officers to face charges?
I mean, I think that you and I were both kind of expecting more indictments, knowing that, by his own admission, Tom Clear said that this dates back to 1995. So that's 3 decades worth of this scheme happening. An important note, just to be clear, Toby LaFave was kind of indirectly named in this scheme by being placed on the Giglio list in Bernalillo County. And that list, there's a huge section, kind of a disclaimer, that these officers are part of an ongoing federal investigation into this corruption scheme. So that's when, we kind of got flagged.
And the Giglio list being a list of officers no longer considered credible, right? That they couldn't sit in a courtroom and testify. It wouldn't be trustworthy.
Him not being credible in court anymore is a big deal. It resulted in, dozens of his cases, pending DWI cases, having to get dismissed in Valencia and Bernalillo counties. So we covered that as well. And I just thought it was interesting how long state police kept him on leave, because
how much money, Gabby, did he make?
I think
it was
I said in the story,
$80,000
plus, because he was
of
getting,
your taxpayer dollars.
He was getting full pay on administrative leave, which is their policy. But what I found strikingly different between how APD handled people, officers that they would place on leave versus state police putting Toby LaFave on leave in February, is that APD was trying to get their interviews done a little quicker, their internal affairs interviews. And that we were seeing was when those officers started to kind of drop like flies from APD.
They said, I'm not
doing
that.
They were resigning
Yep.
because they didn't want to implicate themselves as they were under federal investigation and having to also be interviewed by the FBI. So in this case, I tried asking the chief, who had granted me an interview about LaFave when he was placed on leave, why so long? But I just couldn't get those answers from state police in this case.
Right. And I think, too, what we should note is that there is a new U.S. attorney in place. There's a new administration. This was previously brought, these charges, these indictments were brought under then U.S. Attorney Alex Ubaez, a Biden appointee. Now we have a Trump appointee, which is normal. Typically, when there's a presidential change, you have a new U.S. attorney because they report to the U.S. Department of Justice. So, and it appears right now, right, that the U.S. Attorney's Office, the focus really is on immigration. So it'll be interesting to see. January marks 1 year. January 24th marks 1 year since those first indictments. Will we see any more? It's just it's gonna be interesting.
I've been asking the U.S. Attorney's Office. I asked for an interview with acting U.S. Attorney Ryan Ellison. We had one scheduled. It was canceled multiple times. And in this case, I did also ask, their public affairs office when we can expect any sentencing for these people who have already pled guilty in these cases. We have officers who have taken guilty pleas, have whole admissions of guilt, saying, here's what I did. I accepted bribes essentially to get cases dismissed in court. And we have seen no one to date, as of this recording in December 2025, no one has faced any jail time.
And there's nothing in the court record showing that any upcoming court date that we'll see that anytime soon. And part of me thinks, right, because again, Lefebvre, you mentioned the Giglio list, he's one of several on that list who has not been charged. So are we waiting for all of those to be charged before there are sentences? Because if some of them decide that they want a trial, they might have to testify against each other, right? So a lot of questions,
a lot of
still
moving
out there.
parts, a lot of complications, and us kind of speculating why it is taking so long. The U.S. Attorney's Office could still be doing ongoing investigations into other officers. We wouldn't know that information because if it's an ongoing federal investigation, they can't talk about it. So that's normal. Lastly, I'll just say that the state police did file a misconduct report against Toby Lefebvre's certification. So we'll pay attention to that. We will surely be paying attention to federal court for any potential new charges and sentences.
Right. Yeah, we'll stay on this one. All right. We'll be right back with our final investigation of this special.
Welcome back. In our final investigation, we're going to share with you a major update to a case that Anne has been following about a dysfunctional district attorney's office, an elected official who is meant to hold people accountable in court. Oftentimes, as Anne learned, has not been doing that. Let's check out the latest from McKinley County.
The process to remove Bernadine Martin is still playing out in the New Mexico Supreme Court, but for now, she is accepting help, not only with McKinley County's current criminal caseload, but also with dozens of old cases we brought to light that her office never prosecuted.
It's an image lawmakers and the governor hoped to see July 1st. 4 months later, the San Juan County District Attorney is now truly in charge of his neighboring DA's purse strings.
She ran out of options.
Martin's stalled this move, saying the decision to hand over control of her funding to DA Jack Fortner was illegal. She filed a lawsuit, asked for emergency funds, even used her own salary to keep the office afloat.
So that her employees wouldn't be without jobs or without pay, she was basically had no option but to sign the memorandum of understanding so that we could come in and pay her employees, work with her employees, work with law enforcement, and see that cases get prosecuted here in McKinley County.
With Fortner comes 5 assistant prosecutors. Martin hasn't had any since at least January. Instead, she hired expensive contract attorneys. That, how Martin treats her employees, plus law enforcement's complaints that she doesn't work with them, caught lawmakers and the governor's attention earlier this year. They defunded Martin's office over countless concerns about criminals not being held accountable.
Well, I can tell the community that we're on it. With the help of you, Ann, finding out about some of those cases, they're no longer going to be just sitting on someone's desk.
Cases like the one against this accused rapist.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody that scared. Twice. Yeah, she was freaking out.
Which Martin says she dismissed because she knew him.
Get on the ground now!
And this one against a suspected murderer whose case Martin dropped for a conflict of interest she can't explain. On top of that, KRQE Investigates also uncovered dozens of felony cases: rapes, child abuse, kidnapping, vehicular homicide. The DA decided not to prosecute.
Where are those suspects?
They're roaming around our community, I would assume.
This has got to make you nervous.
It does, and I think it makes the community upset as well. We already have a hard enough time keeping people in jail.
Sheriff James Mariano says some cases date back to 2021 when DA Martin took office, but she never informed his investigators she declined to prosecute or dismissed their cases.
And the reason that our office works with the DA's office is because we can still work back and forth if follow-up interviews need to be done, if additional evidence needs to be searched for, if we need to hire experts. All of that comes from the relationship between the law enforcement agency and the district attorney. We've been lacking that.
But the day Fortner was allowed in, the sheriff says they immediately started talking.
So I actually think this is a breath of fresh air for our staff, because as we work through these, we'll start seeing these get pushed back into court again, and hopefully we'll get some resolution for our community and for the victims that were involved in these cases.
The priority? Getting cases nearing the statute of limitations through the courts first. So the Attorney General's office is taking on a number of cases too. The catch? DA Martin still has to agree to hand them over.
Well, we're on speaking terms, but let's just say she's not real cooperative and she's not really happy with the situation.
We're exhausted. We're exhausted doing this over and over and over again, or even just trying to work with the AG. They have a busy load too, and to be taking 30 plus cases from McKinley County has got to be a burden.
It could be 10 times that amount by the time we're done. We have at this point, we have no way of knowing exactly how many cases are sitting in that office that are still viable, that can and should be, prosecuted by a member of this agency.
Attorney General Raul Torres is concerned about closed cases too, accusing DA Martin of agreeing to illegal plea deals.
We have concerns about people who would be subject, for example, to mandatory sex offender registration, who have had, as a part of the plea negotiation, a guarantee that they wouldn't have to register.
All of these accusations are part of the petition he filed in August, asking the state Supreme Court to remove Martin from office. Whatever the outcome, the AG expects it'll take years to get the county's judicial system back on track.
It's going to be difficult. There are probably going to be some hard and painful conversations with victims, quite frankly, that we may not be able to save their cases.
So this has been a long time in the making. The red flags raised about the office and ultimately help offered to Bernadine Martin, but she didn't accept it right away. Why do you suspect that she did now?
I think, kind of as DA Fortner said, she had no other choice. The money that she had was her salary. So that's what she started using to pay her employees. There's a lot more money than just a salary involved here. You know, the paychecks for your employees. There's copy machines working. There's phone bills to pay. All of these things, gas cards, because these investigators on the DA's team have to go drive to talk to victims and witnesses. So I think she just knew she could not function without financial help. She ran out of her own paycheck. She's currently not being paid because she didn't do by what they wanted, right? So I think it truly was just no other choice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now, Jack Fortner is helping with some of those cases that have sort of been in the backlog, it seems like.
Right.
What's next for McKinley County?
So in December of this year, December 1st through 3rd, we were expecting a trial at the Supreme Court, that trial to remove Bernadine Martin from office, which the AG's office brought. She asked for an extension. It's been moved to March 2nd through 4th. So it's going to be another several months before we will see her in court facing those accusations of being removed. And there are so many witnesses on both of those lists. So it'll be really interesting who's called during that trial and how this all plays out.
It's really unique because you don't see, calls to remove an elected official very frequently. And you learned, how is that? Who can do that, right? Only the governor and the attorney general?
For an elected district attorney.
Correct.
That's the case, right? Yeah, you can't do a recall vote or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, the one thing they really wanted victims to know and the community to know is they are in a better position. They have at least 5 more attorneys at this point, assistant prosecutors helping move cases through. So things are okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate your work, and Ann and I will stay on it. If you guys have any story tips, always feel free to reach out. I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart@KRQE.com via email.
And I'm Ann.Pierret@KRQE.com via email.
Thanks for listening and watching.